Well, welcome to you all. Thank you, Lord, for another opportunity to come together and meet with another person who's adding to our communities. And we are here. I am Elder Chris Burns, and this is another rendition of Community Connect Live. Our guest today is Apostle Christopher E. Taylor. And Apostle Taylor is going to share with us on how to grow our own food and maybe more information on how to get off the grid. And if there was ever a time to know how to get off the grid, you are in it now. Absolutely. Welcome to you, Apostle. Welcome to you.
Thank you so very much for having me.
It is great to be here with you. And I believe I'd like to start off by letting you introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Christopher E. Taylor. I'm a native of Dillon, South Carolina. Of course, as you've already introduced me as such, I'm an apostle in the Lord's Church and the founder of Victory Association Ministries of Dillon, South Carolina, and All Souls Kingdom Assembly of Florence, South Carolina. Basically, I'm the father of 3 children, a husband of 1 wife of 40 years. I'm married to my high school sweetheart.
Alrighty then.
Just enjoying life and enjoying what life is offering to me.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And we're expecting you to share some other benefits to life from your wisdom on what comes out of the ground.
Do my best.
All right. Well, sir, I think the first question I want to ask you is where did you get? Did you grow up in farming, or is what you're going to share with us have to do more with maybe growing stuff inside or in small amounts?
I was raised in the country. I'm a country boy at heart.
All right.
The city life doesn't excite me at all. And I actually grafted pretty much most of what I know about planting from my grandparents, from my grandfathers.
Okay.
My father's father had 12 children. My mother's father had 8 children. So, and of course, I was born in 1965. So that was during the time that Black people didn't have a lot. And
right.
So most they grew their own. And so I grew up seeing chickens all the time, hogs, huge gardens, and just hanging out because I love being around my grandparents. It was easy for me to kind of get information from them and learn those things. And my father's father had a green thumb like you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I see this is in your DNA, so so we want to get with it right now. What would you say is some of the easiest or most beginner friendly plants or vegetables that someone can grow at home?
The easiest vegetables are the leafy greens.
Leafy greens.
The leafy greens, your collard, cabbage, your turnips, your mustards, your kale, broccoli, and they're the easiest because they don't require a plethora of different fertilizers. Nitrogen generally is exactly what you need with the leafy greens, and as long as you keep them fed and watered, they'll produce for you like nobody's business.
Wow. Now, you mentioned nitrogen. Are you talking about the store-bought nitrogen, or are there different ways to kind of replicate that with natural sources?
You can any plant, anything that's growing out of the ground. If you just pile it up and just let it sit, it will produce the nitrogen that you need for growing anything. But you can use the stuff from the store. The experts tell people now, because people were trying to differentiate between natural and synthetic, and the experts are now telling people that your plants don't know the difference. whether it's synthetic or natural.
Right. Well, keep that dollar there.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. Um, for people who have a limited space, maybe they live in an apartment, or there's not much room where they live, maybe they just have a patio or balcony, maybe a couple of windows. Are these some of these plants good for these areas too?
Absolutely. As long as you have 6 to 8 hours of good sunlight, you can
Okay.
grow those plants. Now they'll grow in indirect light, but
Hmm.
they won't be as big if they can get 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. And then depending on uh, what else you're maybe planting, some require a little bit more. Like if you plant a watermelon,
Hmm.
watermelon's going to require a little bit more sunlight.
Uh-huh.
Um, Anything that has a root to it is going to require a little bit more sunlight. Or if it's a root plant, a root vegetable, it'll require a little bit more sun. But the leafy greens, 6 to 8 hours of sun, and they'll produce for you.
Okay. Okay. What about this? I was going to ask you about before you mentioned the watermelon. I was going to ask you about water, about whether any of these plants require a lot of water, or can you get by not trying to steal from anything from the plant, but can you get by with a little water on some of these plants or certain ways to nurture them?
Most of them don't require a lot of water. Now, corn, if you grow corn, corn is greedy. Corn, uh, corn requires a lot of nitrogen and it requires a lot of water. If you skip anywhere when it comes to water or its fertilizer, corn will not produce well.
Mm.
Watermelon requires a good bit of water, but you don't want to overwater them, as well as tomatoes and cucumbers.
Ah, these leafy greens, what kind of turnaround time are we looking at from the time that it goes in the ground to the time it's ready to do something with, put on a plate or something like that? How long are we talking?
Um, Most leafy greens, if it's not one of the root plants, um, about 45 days you can start
Okay.
eating them.
Okay.
Cabbage, you're looking at about 80 to 90 days. Um, Turnips, anywhere from 80 to 100 days, depending on your soil.
Okay. All right. Um, what for the seasons or the length of the seasons? Is there a time? I'm in Florida, and
Right.
really, we there's only one month where it's kind of almost a little bit not as sunny, but it's pretty much sunny most of the time.
Right.
If I want to put some leafy greens out here, like on the patio back here, would it work pretty much any time of the year if I'm here in Florida or
It kind of depends because there are certain ones of the leafy greens
Mhm.
that if the temperature gets above 80,
Mhm.
they'll do what's called bolting, which means that it'll automatically go to seed rather than producing leaves,
Hmm.
because it thinks it's time for it to die and produce seeds. Uh,
Oh,
but most plants will do well, especially in Florida. Cabbages don't do well in heat.
right.
They are not heat tolerant at all.
Wow. Wow. Hmm. Is there a way to do cabbages in? Oh, well, let me ask this: Is there a way to do some of these plants inside with artificial lighting, or is that
Yeah.
not worth it because of the pull on electricity?
Uh, well, the thing is that nowadays, because most lights don't require as much wattage as they did, like when I was a child.
Right.
Um, you can grow most things with grow lights. The thing is that you have to do your homework as far as which lights you need and how bright it needs to be, because grow light some plants require a little bit more um, sunlight than others do.
Mhm. Mhm. What?
And
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
the key to it is doing your homework on it, because not all plants are created equal.
Right. Well, this may be. I don't know if this. Well, we'll see how it goes. What are your favorites?
I'm a greens man. I love leafy greens.
Uh,
I could eat cabbage every day of the year.
Oh, that's good.
So cabbage and okra. I love okra, and I know a lot of people aren't fond of okra, but I
Right.
love okra. Um, Tomatoes. I get my mother and I have an avid, very avid taste for craving for tomatoes. I eat tomatoes all year round.
Mm, mm. Now, years ago, I tried some tomatoes, and they got away from me. I mean, it's like it was too many of them for me to keep up with.
Right.
So I should have had a system ready to give them out or deliver them or something like that. But I do
Well,
recall this about my mother's tomatoes when I was a child. They tasted a whole lot better than the ones that are in the store
yes,
right
sir.
now, and the
Yes, sir.
skin was thinner. The
Yes,
ones
sir.
now they don't have as much taste, and it's thicker. It's almost an orange peel.
Yeah,
So,
the ones that they have nowadays actually are pretty much bland con,
good.
con, compared to the ones that you grow at home.
Right. So now you mentioned cabbage. I was thinking about that's it's a leafy. It's thick.
Mhm.
I don't know what the correct word for it is, but the ones that have the really thick leaves like a cabbage. Do you grow broccoli and things like that?
Yes, I have
Okay.
broccoli in my garden right now.
Okay. Now you mentioned the heat. Does broccoli have some of the same challenges as far as heat that cabbage would? Because they're
Yeah,
both cruciferous.
broccoli will bolt on you. If
Mm.
it gets warm, it will bolt.
Okay.
You have broccoli. Broccoli is basically a fall uh, fruit vegetable. It grows better in the fall than it does in the summer. It's not heat tolerant at all.
Right. Now you love cabbage.
Yes,
So
sir.
how do you work it out to get the most out of the time that you can get it out?
Um, I what I stay on top of it, and I make sure that I keep them fertilized well. I am not stingy when it comes to fertilizer and staying on
Okay.
top of it. And but I try to make sure that I plant them because, like cabbage, of course, it takes a little bit longer for it to grow to produce the head. So you
Mhm.
have to make sure that you plant it in the right time of the year. Because if you plant it in like mid spring,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to do very well with it. Now they do make an all season every season type cabbage that is a little more heat tolerant. But like in South Carolina, as hot as it gets, it still won't survive through like past July.
Ah, wow. Yeah. Now this goes neat. This goes deep into your ancestry, and you're allowing it to function in your life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still learning, or is this something you just I got it now? Kind of I got it now. I'm cool.
I'm I'm still learning. I'm always trying to find some kind of way to make it better, to make it more abundant. So I'm a self-professed nerd. I am constantly reading. I'm on YouTube all day, all night, watching videos, reading the periodicals, reading anything that I can get my hands on, because I know there's a better way to do anything at any time.
Right, right. Something else just occurred to me that I recall from my background. My mother used to. She was in the canning and jarring. She had a grocery
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So I was going to ask you, you have things that come. This past winter, I was watching a football game, and I had a like a YouTube thing on my hand about
Mm-hmm.
making coleslaw. So I watched. I heard everything was in there. I knew I had all the ingredients to start making coleslaw because of football. It wasn't that interesting anyway. It was a blowout, I think, or something like that. And that was the first time in my entire life why I had done that, even though I grew up watching my mother do it. Now this is like a couple of months ago, and when it was ready, I mean, I ate it every day, so it's gone now. I need
Right.
do the things that the crops that you bring forth. Do you can, do you jar, do you preserve them any kind of ways?
I I I don't can, but I do freeze stuff. I've got a freezer full of stuff right now.
You,
And
you
I
freeze the vegetables.
right because well, my wife and I empty nesters. All of our children are grown and gone, so
Mhm.
I grow for us and for them whenever they, want something fresh. But plus, they have their own little gardens as well. But I do freeze to have something in my freezer.
Nice. Um, what are um, what are some preparations someone can take now to get ready for planting season? Because I don't know what it's like. Just there's most of my relatives are in Michigan now, so what they got now is snow.
Right.
So, if you're in South Carolina and your temperature's probably closer to ours, but you all have a few more seasons than we do. We
Right.
just got wet and hot.
Well, right now is the time that that like I just started doing my tomatoes as far as um, putting pre-planting and putting them in planting them in cells. Um, One of the things that you would want to start doing right about now, usually around January is when I start kind of playing with my ground.
Mhm.
If you're planning on planting a garden outside in the ground, this would be the time that you would want to start kind of trying to do some little subsidizing in it. Um, Maybe um, covering something up to kill some weeds and some grass, or burning, depending on where you live, whether you live within the city limits or in the country. I live in the country, so we can
So you
light
burn
stuff.
it.
Yep, I burn it. As a matter of fact, I have a 30 by 30 plot right now that I didn't plant anything in over winter, so that I could get a better harvest this coming spring. So I'll be burning that this weekend, as a matter of fact.
So you say to get a better harvest. Is that something like you letting the soil rest or something like that?
Yeah, yes,
All right.
because you can overdo it with your soils, especially if you're not amending it properly.
Mhm.
Because if you're planting something that's really greedy like squash and zucchini,
Mhm.
uh, you have got to make sure that you come back behind that and put something in there to boost it back up.
All right. Now there's going to be rabbit holes because you're going to be using professional planter words that are going to okay, like instead of mending it properly. What does that mean? Mending it properly.
It means putting whatever nutrients you need into it. Like you might um, when it comes to gardening and well fertilizing, you got NP and K, you got nitrogen,
Mhm.
phosphorus, and potash.
Uh-huh.
Um, and depending on what you're planning on planting, you'll decide what you need to amend the ground with. Like if you're doing collards, cabbage, broccoli, turnips, you want to amend with nitrogen. If you're doing root vegetables, you want to use potassium. You want what they call bone meal. Uh,
Bone meal.
bone meal is what helps to grow your root crop.
What is bone meal?
It's literally bone. It's animal
Okay, I
bone,
was wondering
ground
about
animal
that.
bone.
I I recall people used to, you know, extra parts, extra
Yeah,
pieces, put it in the ground, take it back
yep,
to the earth.
yep. But what it does is that it helps support any root crop that you have. Like that my grandfather used to grow some of the largest turnips, but he knew how to amend the ground.
Uh, uh, all right, I'm going to jump back to some things that. Well, wait, let me get this one first here because you mentioned cells, preparing cells. What are cells?
They're little trays,
Hmm.
anywhere from 6 to 72, or and even more than that, where you put this your smaller plants in, smaller seeded plants in,
Oh, okay.
and get them started. Because
Oh,
like
okay.
this time of the year would kill them if you if you were trying to grow them outside.
Uh-huh.
So you start those cells inside. You plant everything and keep it watered, and because plants don't really require seeds don't require light
Hmm.
to to germinate. So you can grow them inside. Because like since I've started my tomatoes now, what I do now is I put them out during the day when the temperature's above 50 degrees. I put them outside and leave them out all day.
Uh-huh.
When the sun starts going down, I bring them in, and I
Hmm.
just keep doing that. And what that does is it puts me in a position where I don't have to harden them whenever it gets time for me, comes time for me to plant. And hardening simply just puts it means that it makes it tolerant of the sun, of sunlight.
Oh, okay.
Because if you grow it inside, but it's not actually experience sunlight. If you put it out in the sunlight will burn it.
Oh, okay. Well, while I'm on that subject about being out and not getting abused by the sun, and what have you found to be the most durable plants? The one that's hardest to mess up.
Um, onions,
Now, why
onions.
why why is that? Because it takes a little while for an onion to develop, though. But I guess it's under the ground most of the time.
Yeah. And in all honesty, I really don't know why onions are so resilient, but I mean, you literally have to work to kill onions. I mean, because they are going to survive um, no matter what.
Anything that sounds like that has got to be real good for you or real bad
Yeah.
for you.
And onions and garlic, they're real good for your blood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you tried garlic?
I have.
And how has that gone, or is it something you do often, or is it? When I
Um,
think of garlic, I think about like the other side of the ocean, Italian stuff like that. But I know people grow it here.
right. Yeah. A lot of people where I live grow it, and I was amazed at the number of people who actually grow their own garlic. Because but garlic is good for your heart, so I
Right.
think that's why a lot of them grow it. But as long as you keep garlic and onions, as long as you keep them watered, they don't even really require a lot of fertilizer. Now you have to make sure that you do use a little sulfur with them, but they are they're going to be your easy crop.
Wow. And again, how long does it take for them to come up?
Um, you're looking at 90 to 100 days with them.
Mm-hmm. For you, what time of the year?
Um, actually, should be putting your onions out about now
Okay.
because they're cold hardy. They will stand the cold.
Okay. Well, I don't have any, but I let my folks know. I'll let my folks know. It's good to know. It is good to know. And you all's weather, because I know I got peoples there. You all's weather has been um, a little wilder than I remember it being
Yeah,
years ago. It's the range has been more rangy.
yeah. Our weather has been a little bipolar lately.
Okay, that's a word for it. How has that worked out? Have you had any do it as far as any unexpected cold? Anything you need to do to try to protect it if you know it's coming, or any, or is it?
the the top thing, the number one thing is especially like when you may get an unexpected frost is if you have something in the ground this early in the year, make sure you have plastic. If you put plastic over, unless it gets like down into the low teens, putting plastic over it will usually preserve whatever it is that you planted. Because what it does is it keeps the cold from literally settling directly on the plant. Because
Right.
that's what winds up killing it. If the cold gets directly to it, it's not so much the temperature; it's just that cold literally touching the plant.
Okay. All right, Apostle Taylor. I want you to imagine something right now for a moment, right now. You imagine, take yourself back inside. You're not on the Taylor homestead. You're
Right,
living in an apartment. You got plenty
right,
of windows, and
right,
you set to do this thing. You known a little bit about planting, but not really. All you know is about flowers. But
right,
you committed. You don't have a place to make a farm, but you want to do as much as you possibly can because you are tired of going to the store. You are tired
right,
of spending a bunch of money, and so you are actually committed to doing it. You're this person, not much knowledge on the subject, but a willing heart, willing to learn, and but you do want to start off doing the most you can do with what you have.
right,
Okay,
right.
and you've got that. You pictured that in your imagination.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now let's give some advice on how you think you'd go about it. Now, remember, you
If
can't be
you
as brilliant as you are right now. You're still kind of new.
if you're gonna grow from seed to harvest inside, a good potting soil is what you're gonna want to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to make sure that whatever container you're growing it in will be able to support the root system of that plant, which means that um, if you're planting a tomato and you're trying to grow that inside, tomatoes grow deep. They go deep. So you're
Mm.
going to have to make sure that you have something at least that's at least 10 inches wide and at least, you know, 18 to 24 inches deep. If
18.
you don't, you'll still get tomatoes, but they will be smaller
Mm.
because the tomatoes are going to require a lot of room for its roots to grow.
Right.
Um, you don't want to grow anything in anything less than 10 inches wide or 10
Yeah.
inches deep,
Okay. All right.
because most plants are gonna reach about 10 inches deep. Now there are the ones like tomatoes that the roots are going to go deeper.
Right. Now you mentioned tomatoes again. I just thought about something again. Is that I of course I'm talking about real tomatoes. I'm not talking about the ones that, I described, but I
Yeah.
do like cherry tomatoes. Are they easy to grow or more difficult to grow than a regular tomato?
Cherry tomatoes are easy to grow, and the more you pick, the more they grow.
What
As
the
a
more you put, oh really?
and as a matter of fact, I decided the year before last that I was not going to plant cherry tomatoes again because
Yeah,
I
overran you.
I couldn't keep up with them. I could not keep up with them. So
Wow.
I said, well, I won't do this again.
Oh, wow. Mm. Um, we're talking about getting off the grid. Now, we may go back and forth about food. Any other suggestions you have concerning ways for people to get off the grid, or is it mostly about the food part, which is an important part? Because if you're not eating, ain't nothing happening.
Right. Um, Solar panels, and um, generators, electric generators, or gas generators also, but solar panels are beginning to become the big thing nowadays.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people are switching to that, and because lights, especially now, don't require as much wattage,
Hmm.
you literally can light your house with solar panels.
Right. I've noticed over the last I've pondered over the last couple of years. I have a big gas generator sitting out here, and even though we've had a hurricane, I haven't had to use it. That's fine though; it's there. Uh, but I have pondered the idea of a solar generator.
Mhm.
Have you used them? Do you have, or what's your insight on that?
I have friends who have them, and in all honesty, my wife and I had been looking into getting some installed ourselves, because it puts you in a position where you're not dependent on the grid if something
Right.
happens.
Right.
Because if the lights go out, you're still going to have light.
Right. Yeah.
That's the
Now
good thing, because it's batteries.
I've even seen the portable solar generators. Have
Mhm.
you seen those?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now you've got you're speaking of the whole house, and I'm for
Not necessarily.
or the part that you'll need if you lose power.
Right. Right.
That's the deal, right?
Right.
You know anybody who's tried one of those portable
Yep.
solar?
I know several people that have them, and they love them. They
Do they?
love because they're so convenient, as far as, like, even if they go outside and they're doing something that requires power, they can just carry it along with them. And that's the thing that's made it attractive to me, the
Yeah.
fact that I can just grab it and go where I need to go with it.
Yeah. This past hurricane, we had plenty of people in our neighborhood. Some didn't have generators. Some had access to a generator but didn't have any gas. And then after a while, a very short period of time, all of the gas stations were out of gas.
Right.
And there was people who were, of course, losing the meat and everything else. And uh, it was just something. So I really began to think about it. Then it's okay if something like this happened again. Thank God we didn't have a bunch of damage. What was damaged was repairable. But okay, got a big generator, no gas to put in it.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
that's the advantage of solar, because I mean, as long as it's not raining or cloudy, the sun is going to give you the power you need.
yeah. I if nothing else, I really like the price of sun.
Absolutely.
um. Okay. Beyond. Okay, this is kind of what I just asked, but beyond growing your own food, what are some of the other ways a person could be self-sufficient in being off the grid in their daily lives, not necessarily an emergency situation that I was just talking about, but maybe ways of practice in their daily lives, getting off the grid.
Well, you can look. A person could look into, like, kind of seeing what they can literally make themselves,
Mm.
um, as far as being self-sufficient, because um, I remember my grandparents making lye soap.
Really?
Yeah,
Was that in the big tub thing?
yep. In the big the big black wash pot.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, no one really sews for themselves anymore. So very few people make their own clothing.
Right.
Um, but one would just have to. It depends on what your demands are as
Mhm.
far as becoming self sufficient. But most people are dependent on the grid, and when the
Right.
grid goes down, they're lost.
Right. I want to now. This particular question comes to me when I would call it came back to Christ. I grew up in church, knew about Jesus, heard about Jesus, had some experiences, uh, then stumble through life, then stumble back to the altar. And but when I
Back to
really
the
came back to sound familiar for a lot of people, but when I got back really into the Word, it began to speak to me, and the Word began to talk about. So I like being in nature.
right.
I'm probably the laziest nature person there ever was because I don't fish, but I like being on around in the water and around the water, and I like I'm not a mountain climber, but I like being out on a mountain and those kind of things. And I don't hunt, but I like being in the woods.
Right.
So I'm just out there, but I ain't doing nothing. Just me and God.
My brother, I live in the woods. I grew up in the woods. I couldn't think of anything else that I wanted to do but be in the woods. My wife and I live on right at 5 acres of woods,
I hear you. I hear
and I
you.
love.
So there's a spiritual matter when I came back to God, when anything that had to do with the word, whether it's Proverbs or Psalms or any other part, when it's talking about the earth, when it's talking about trees, when it's talking about crops, when it's talking about anything that had to do with growth, it was really speaking to me. And of course, in a walk with God, you can get an insight on anything and everything, and He can talk to you about anything, everything, and explain to you. So, how this upbringing and this life that you've had, being a tiller of the soil, of one who brings forth assistance with God and bringing forth the fruit of the ground. How much does that come into your spiritual life, and how much does your spiritual life come into that?
Well, considering that the scripture says that the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, I I recognize that what God did was he formed the earth so that it would provide for us everything that we need.
Everything.
And so I recognize that he literally um, prepared everything that I needed, so that and all I needed to do was just go and um, what's the word I'm looking for? The word that I'm thinking I don't want to use, but
Mhm.
basically go and parlay it into what I need it to be,
Oh,
so
okay.
that it's for sustenance. Because you consider that it's medicine, for the food is medicine.
Hmm.
Food is nourishment,
Right.
and we've got wood that we can where we can build our housing and everything. So we're looking at the fact that uh, our physical provision mirrors his spiritual provision to us and for us.
Mhm. Right. There's we mentioned food being medicine. Um, I believe there's more people who are getting back to the idea that a pill just ain't going to be enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and of course our ancestry, they would have plenty of people from our ancestry was more connected to the soil in the past, and so aside from the food itself being medicine because of what you eat, the
Mhm.
knowledge of what different roots were for. Um, did you come in? Is that was that part of your background as well? Was it mostly farming?
Um, I would have to say that it was a broad brush as far as I mean, um, because of the era that I grew up in.
Mhm.
um, I mean, it pretty much canvassed everything.
Right, right. I just thought about this when you mentioned onions. It's like people used onions for everything.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. You could eat it by itself. You can put it in your food. It had this other stuff. You can put it on a wound. All these different things. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I hope that there's a continuation of more insight on us getting back to the knowledge of something other than just pills. Now, I'm not against the medical community, but
Absolutely.
I think God had it right the first time. So we got to get back to it.
Well, and even when you go back to the onion thing, considering that onions are used, onions and garlics are used for cleansing,
Right.
and it can kind of put you in the mind of what the Holy Spirit does and the blood of Jesus does
Right.
in us and through us, cleansing us. I remember when I was planting my onions a couple of years ago, and I happened to think about that. That it's good for cleansing the blood and the body and the bowels and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Holy Ghost does the same thing with our spirits. So he is our spiritual onion, so to speak.
Right. 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 I know where I live. There was a plant here. There was a aloe vera plant. Now in Michigan, you got to buy aloe vera. It doesn't grow up there. Uh,
Right.
but this is warm here, so it's here. Then after a while, I said I'm going to do some of this. I'll make sure. So I start watering it. It nearly killed it. And then I said I'm going to sit it a little bit further in the sun, and that really didn't work. So I just left it where it was, a little bit of sun and
Mhm.
different things like. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of a geography thing. That was a what do you call it? A trial and error thing.
Right.
And now I know just basically leave it alone. Leave it
Yeah.
alone. And when I have like a cut or something like that, instead of using Neosporin, I go out there and break off a piece and rub it on there. All good. Had bee stings, rub it on there. All
Yep. Yep.
all good. So you're right that all these things are right there. But with that, that trial and error has something to do with geography. Now you mentioned being the South Carolina fellow an area, but I realize in Michigan or here, you can go like a mile away. You got to deal with a different kind of geography. You can go
Absolutely.
50 feet away and be dealing with a different kind of geography. Um, so when you get outside, what are you looking for in the soil? I know you mentioned making cells and preparing the soil. Is there any type of soil you really don't want to mess with?
Um, you it's you don't want to deal with light colored soil. You want the darker, the better.
Yeah.
The darker it is, the richer it's going to be. It's
Mhm.
kind of like doctors tell you if it's white, don't put it in your body
Right.
because because everything that was good for you that was in it is now gone. And that's kind of like that. And it's like that with dirt or with soil. If it's light colored, it's probably not going to be good for your plant.
Right.
The
Right.
plant, and the thing is that the plant will actually grow in it, but it won't be as healthy. It won't be as green. It won't be as vibrant as if it was in that dark soil.
Mm. Mm. Now we're down here, and we're not right on the Gulf. I mean, where I live is not right on the Gulf of Mexico, although Tampa, St. Pete is. And you find you can go 10 miles in. there's still some sandy soil.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
there's stuff that grows in sand, but that ain't your choice most of the time.
No, the only thing that you're really, as long as you give it nutrients, things like watermelons, cucumbers, cantaloupes, they like sandy soil,
Mm.
but then you have to make sure that you give them enough sun and give them enough nutrients, because if you don't, they'll just kind of give you some ugly little halfway green plants and say, we're not going to give you a gourd, we're not going to give you any fruit, we're just going to grow and look like we're supposed to do something.
Yeah, but it ain't gonna be right. Mm. Now, I this may be for someone who's looking at getting their own property, or maybe they have their own property and doing something. I got a tree out there, and hopefully in the next couple of years some fruit will be on it. But if I were just looking for a piece of land or a few acres, if it had some kind of fruit tree already on it, it would catch my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking about planting things and growing things, and I mentioned, okay, what's the turnaround time? You have experience with different types of trees, or do you have any fruit trees in your reach?
Yeah, fruit trees. Um, it may take anywhere from 2 to 10 years for them to produce fruit. It just depends on what type of tree it is. Like I have a black walnut tree in my yard that I planted a few years ago, um, and I think next year will be the first year that I should start expecting to see anything on it. But the first 5 years of a black walnut tree's life, they're not going to produce anything for you. They're just going to be pretty during
Yeah.
the warm season.
Now, I had a situation. My situation was when we had the hurricane, the one that was growing, and my neighbor had this situation last year. Now, a neighbor, he's from Cambodia. He's got a bunch of different little fruit trees.
Mm-hmm.
And from winds last year, one of them was pulled all the way out of the ground, but he put it back in the ground and in time, and it came through. And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember that. And I had that situation this year. I put it back in the ground. It's not fruitful yet.
Right.
But do you know of ways for people to buy maybe smaller trees that have already gotten started, and so they're not going from through the whole process of waiting?
You can either go to a nursery
Mhm.
and get one that's probably going to go ahead and fruit, but there's something that's called grafting
Right.
or air layering,
Uh,
where you can just go to a tree that has already produced fruit,
uh,
and but then there's a whole lot of stuff that you've got to do to it to
ye-
get it to produce a root that you can cut off and put in the ground. When you put it in the ground, you're placing that tree's clone in the
right,
ground, so
right.
it's going to start producing fruit immediately, and you have to prune it to make sure that it doesn't, so it'll actually grow and won't be stunted. But if you air layer any tree, you've just taken a clone off that tree, and it's ready to produce fruit when you put it in the ground.
Mm, mm. I've seen that, and of course, there's the whole spiritual thing of us being grafted in, and
Yes,
I've
sir.
seen pictures of that. I've seen people who've done it. I've seen a mother do it with different. Um, it looks like it. Yeah, it looks like it looks like something. It looks like okay, it'll work, but it's easy to mess. It seems like it'd be easy to mess up.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you have when you do that, you have to prune it. My brother, now that is his superpower.
Oh, is that right?
He has the ability to air layer anything, and it
Mm,
and it flourishes.
wow, wow.
As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to be procuring some prune trees, not prune trees, some plum trees from him this year.
Mm, mm, wow. On fruit. Um, which oh no, let me go. Let me go to this. There was I used to notice this. Um, what appears to be a multitude of different types of trees that look like they produce some
Mhm.
kind of beans. But a lot of times they're in places where I don't have any evidence that people are actually eating those beans or anything like things like that. First, beans, the different ways. Do you grow beans, peas? Uh,
Yeah, I plant peas. Well, I was planting them every year. I held off this past year. Um, Peas are usually easy to grow because they set their own nitrogen.
Mm,
The only thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you amend them with potash and the bone meal, because they have to produce flowers in order to get the pods. And so, anything that produces flowers is going to need bone meal and potash,
mm,
and
okay.
not so much nitrogen.
Mm, mm. Wow. Now so I have no real understanding on these other beans that seem to hang from trees. Do you have any information or knowledge on what's up with that?
Absolutely not, unfortunately. I've,
Okay.
I've seen what you're talking about, I've never actually looked into it or anything
Mm,
like that.
mm. All right. This this period of time we're in right now, uh, where you may end up paying a whole lot of money for. Now, this is mostly about growing things, but I've kept a good relationship with the people that I have that are neighbors who have chickens.
Right.
So and I like eggs, so we'll hopefully we can stay friends no matter what happens.
Right.
Do you have uh, animals as well, chickens or anything like that?
I did have chickens. Someone saw fit to liberate them from me.
Ah,
But I had 11 chickens and they produced daily,
wow.
um, through the summer. Generally, once the days start getting shorter, they don't produce as much, and sometimes they'll stop laying altogether until the spring comes around again.
Ah,
Um, but chickens they were easy. Um, um,
they were just eating grass, or did you feed them some?
I gave them feed, but also there were some plants that I grew that were growing in my yard wild
Mhm.
that I found out were like uh, penicillin to chickens, or they were real healthy for them.
Oh,
And so I would make sure that I threw that in it because chickens they're basically omnivores. They'll eat pretty much anything.
they'll pick it.
But I would pull those up and throw them in, and that kept them healthy. And the
Mhm.
eggs were just out of this world.
Okay. Are you thinking about going back to that or no?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well,
In
look,
fact, this spring
you
I'm
might
going
be,
back to it.
you might be more than a few miles away, but you are now my neighbor. So I'll be like, so you're on the
Well,
neighbor list too.
I think once I get up and going, I'm going to share some with the Elijah family.
Great. Wonderful. Wonderful. I was really interested in doing the chicken thing, but I thought as many times as my wife and I, it's two challenges. I didn't know that I had a neighbor who could kind of keep an eye on them when I wasn't around,
Right,
and I didn't want them to just be cooped up. I wanted to be out.
right.
So we have eagles and hawks, and
Mm,
so yeah, yeah. So yeah, the idea that they might get picked up or picked off every now and then was a bit of concern too.
yeah. I was blessed as far as that was concerned, I just chalk it up for the Holy Ghost watching out for me because I had a neighbor down the street.
Right,
Um, Chicken hawks ate his chickens up. I
but
never
not
lost a
yours.
single. I never lost a single chicken to a chicken hawk or an owl.
Now, are you saying that your heir was blessed, or
Had to be.
or your chickens were saved? Which one are you saying?
I, Probably a little bit of both.
All right, that's all right. Yeah, there's something that happens once people begin to grow, and of course you said I'm country boy. You said I'm going, that, and so but I've seen the thing where the more you have some things going on, what you're doing ends up being like its own economy. It ends up being its own system. It ends up
Yeah,
you taking care of yourself, and then if you live in an environment where other people are doing that, you got your own economy is really kind of shielded from the rest of the economy that's going on out there in a lot of ways.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Have you noticed that, or is that a part of it? You want to touch on that a
I
little
have
bit?
noticed that. I have noticed that I know when I started doing it, I noticed that it became a thing.
Mm.
But then at the same time, because I was harping on my Facebook page about people beginning to plant their own food or growing their own food,
Right.
and to my surprise, people started literally taking it up and growing their own food, and it's 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 a community now,
Yeah.
and I love it. I mean, it's a community, and I love it.
Yeah. You end up sharing. You end up sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Once again, before we got about maybe we got a few more minutes, but again, especially for the brand Nubians, the ones who maybe don't have enough that much space, but even if they do have space, they just knew it. Again, a good place to start. They just want to get in and they're ready to start moving. Good places to start. Green leaf. Inside, you said no smaller than what size container in depth and width?
Um, Nothing smaller than 10 inches wide, 10 inches deep. I would recommend that they go to the Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree
Dollar
has
Tree.
just started putting a lot of the planting stuff out in their stores. They have seeds, as a matter of fact, in them. So start there. Um, Now I go to Walmart and get their expert brand of either topsoil or potting soil, and I
Mm.
use that. Something that a friend of mine has been very successful with is the small kiddie pool.
Kiddie pool.
Um,
Oh, like
yes,
little
sir.
plastic pools?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Put you some holes in the bottom of it, fill that up with potting soil, and plant in it what you want.
Mm.
Uh, and I promise you, if you keep it watered, um, it will produce,
Mm, mm,
especially
mm,
the leafy greens.
mm. Now, something I thought about, I think it was this morning I was reading, and this came to mind about seeds specifically. I
Mm-hmm.
recall being around Amish people, and I remember being in certain areas where people bought seeds, and
Mm-hmm.
people who really had a feel for the soil, they'd kind of move the seeds around in their hand to see what's right. Have you ever dealt with, or is there a way to end up getting seeds that aren't what up to what it's supposed to be?
Um, yeah. They if the seed is any good, it's you're literally are going to be able to feel. Um, I don't know any other way to say that you will literally be able to feel the life in that
Life.
seed.
I was saying life. Yeah.
If it's not good, and I know it may sound corny to somebody who may be watching, but if the seed is not
Well,
good,
this is for the people who don't think it's corny.
but but you will literally be able to sense or feel that there's no life in that seed. And
Right.
and, and also, if you put it in water, a seed that is any good will, if it's any good, it'll kind of go under the water, but the dead ones will float.
Mm, mm. That's how I felt about it. I mean, I don't know cognitively or by experience. It's like, okay, I've seen some that look kind of dried out,
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
dusty.
Yeah.
But yeah, uh, from the heart, from expertise or any way that you want to share now, anything else that you might feel maybe this on your heart about the subject, uh, it could be beneficial to us.
Just get started. Just start somewhere. The average person is generally, once they see that life in that leaf, they'll fall in love with it.
Right.
I've had a lot of people to tell me that, well, I just don't have a green thumb. I don't have the ability to grow. Um, it is far simpler to grow things than people think it is. And generally, especially like the person who may be growing on their balcony, it'll take them less than 5 minutes,
Mm.
um, a couple of times a week, to go in and give it the water that it needs and give it the nutrients. As a matter of fact, um, I brought these little props.
Oh, okay. What's
but
that? Sure.
but
Let's see.
this is
What's that?
basic. I know that's backwards, but this is basically what I use with my
Like,
stuff. This is the blue stuff at Walmart,
okay.
and um, fish emotion. A lot of people call it 511.
Mm-hmm.
and I love this for my collards and my leafy greens, because they will cause, if you, I mean, when you mix the two together, they'll cause your plants to explode. You
Mm.
can, I mean, you can practically have a brown hair, a
Now,
brown thing.
when you said mix them together, is there a certain mix, or you just kind of wing it a little bit?
Follow the instructions on the
It,
box,
it'll okay.
and just mix them together, and they'll do what they're supposed to do, what they're labeled to do.
Mm.
And I can guarantee that, because that's the formula that I use, especially with my leafy greens and my fruit bearing plants.
Great, great. Well, sir, it's been a joy allowing you to give us all this insightful information.
I've enjoyed it, sir.
On that which springs from the ground and the Spirit of God that's behind it. We thank you. I thank you, Apostle. This is Apostle Christopher E. Taylor. I also appreciate his first name, one of my favorite names in the world.
No, that's right.
And both for you and for our listeners in your endeavors as your planning is coming forth, may there be tremendous springing forth of bountifulness to God's glory. We thank you.
Amen.
And be blessed and be a blessing.